Hello and welcome to Hobby Hall Session 5. So, by Session 5 that means we're over a month in now. So welcome to yet another episode where we are going to be looking at some hobby for Warhammer, specifically going into Legions Imperialis. And we're revisiting some projects that we started a few weeks ago, obviously with the Christmas period and all that entailed. We switched gears a little bit, done some building. Last week myself and Zeta also did a split stream where they were building, they were painting some word bearers, and I then proceeded to sort of build some Baneblade tanks from last week, which are still up there, haven't moved since then. It's been a very busy week. Been working on the new terrain that we're going to be using here at the Mead Hall, and some new things we're hopefully going to introduce via our socials and our YouTube channel as well. So today I thought I'd actually go back and carry on with the Armigers from a few weeks ago. Still got 3 to sort of do all the base coats on, but then we can also move on and look at how we finish up the paint job on the others, and possibly have a practice at trying something a little bit different as well, as I've noticed something that I might want to change, which does mean also going back over the other 9 Armigers I've already done. But thankfully that'll only be a minor little change, so hopefully that won't be too bad to sort out. But nevertheless, it should be quite fun. And we'll have a little discussion around what we're doing and some other things as well. Some new exciting things will be coming in the new year, and some new ideas, and some progress has been made. So we should have some fun looking at all of those. But for now, let's move over to my other screen and let's get some paint on some models. So there we go. Swap over to that screen. I'm going to awkwardly twist my chair around because I don't have a swivel chair at the moment, as the arm's broken on it, very annoyingly. So might need to just adjust where the camera is a little bit. Got to be a little bit careful because I've got my lights here, and somehow I've managed to move things around so that the lights are in view now, which is a bit annoying. There we go. Hopefully that'll be better. Right then, so what we're going to do is we're going to visit these 3 little guys here and get them up to the same stage as we got the other 6 last time. Let's get all those reds and bronzes and blacks in place, and then washing the whole thing in Nuln Oil. And then when we come back to these guys, we're going to be finishing them off with a couple extra washes and picking out any final details, which on these guys isn't a whole lot, to be perfectly honest. These guys are nice and simple, so it's pretty much going to be a few washes on these guys and picking out those eyes. And I think these will actually be done. These are very quick, minus potentially one small change we're going to make, or add, shall we say. A couple of these also need their bases finishing off, particularly the guys with the sandbags on their bases, because they need to be hit with some contrast. So let's go. So we're going to start with our Mephiston Red, which, as you can see, I've dropper bottled, which anyone who has watched any of my previous streams will know that is my method for storing all my paints. Mainly because I like to use the airbrush as much as I can. And I do a lot of terrain painting and big models and stuff, so the airbrush is very useful. So might as well just have everything ready to go. And they're much easier to work with in terms of decanting into the wet palette. So pop a drop of red in there, don't too much. Now I use a variety of brushes in doing the armour panels on these guys, because they've got lots of small panels and some slightly larger ones. So we're going to go for the tiny brush to start with, just to get into the nooks and crannies of the leg plates here, because they're quite small. And then we'll move up to a slightly bigger brush as we go up the body. And we need a little bit more contact surface. And thankfully for this stage, we don't need to be too neat. And we do 2 coats of this red just to get a nice coverage on over that metallic. And I will mention obviously that for anyone who's not seen any of the previous stuff with me painting these knights, I don't need to be too careful here, because all of that trim is going to be done with a Rune Lord brass anyway, so we don't need to worry too much about being too neat. Obviously you don't want to slap it on too hard or too thick anyway, because it will not look great in the long run, which is why we do the 2 coats of the red here. To be honest, that's the only bit that makes the knights, my knights, actually take any length of time really, is the 2 coats of red that has to be brushed on. Because I just tend to find that it's not really worth sub-assembling them, even with some of the armour panels that could be left off on some of the knights, even some of the bigger ones. It doesn't really benefit too much to do them separately. Obviously if I did them separately as much as possible, then obviously I could just spray these up with the airbrush and probably do it in one, well, I would do it in 1 coat then. But I do tend to find that that's not actually particularly useful on these little guys. I don't know why, it just doesn't seem to provide any significant time advantage, which is a shame. But by the time you've set up all those fiddly little panels on some kind of painting handle and sprayed them all up, and then post that, you then have to obviously either try and scrape off paint to glue them on with plastic glue, or you've got to mess around with super glue to try and get them back on the model. It just ends up being a bit of a kerfuffle, and I don't really think it's worth it, in my opinion. So I try to be as lazy as possible with these guys and do actually brush these on, but I don't mind so much because, again, you don't actually need many knights to have painted quite a lot of points worth of models. And so yeah, so I've managed to, you can paint up quite a large number of these guys for very little time investment, which makes them quite how would you call it? Efficient. That's the word I'm looking for. So I got very distracted because a certain someone decided to just walk in the room during a recording session, which they're not supposed to, and just distracted me completely there from my train of thought. But hey ho, we'll move on. So yes, so in an upcoming podcast, which will probably be coming out probably 2 weeks from this recording, give or take. There's another podcast coming out this week, before the one I'm talking about, I think. Probably it'll either be the last one of January or the first one of February, where we sort of discuss what we're doing with Legions and what we hope is going to happen over the next year. I got the short straw, if you like, to talk about my hobby progress in the Tankard Talk section of our podcast. And to be honest, we're normally a little bit nervous about, or I say we some of us are sometimes a bit nervous about how much we can talk about in terms of hobby progress, but I'm not going to lie, I was very confident this time because I have painted a lot of Legions since the last time I was ambushed on Tankard Talk, and I won't spoil exactly how much everything has got to, but I can tell you that by the time that goes live, I'll have finished off all these knights, and My Knights army alone for Legions is 4,000 points. Almost exactly. So, yeah, that is a significant amount of points done in, I believe, it'll be in the region of a month and a half to 2 months, which obviously putting that in the context of the fact that there was Christmas in that, and I've also been heavily working on terrain and other projects as well now, which has delayed some of these to a degree. I would say is very quick and very good progress for a Warhammer army. And what's quite nice about this as well is most of that all came from the Knights Battle Group box, which you can only get from GW Direct. But it is a very nice box. It's got a little bit of red on there. It's a bit annoying. There's a little bit of lead belcher there I can use to just cover that up. A little bit of lead belcher on there is obviously not very good. I need to grab a little bit just to touch that up, because if I don't touch it up now and I forget it later, it will annoy me till the end of the earth when I eventually discover it towards the end, after I've done all the washing, which would not be fun. Let's grab a fresh bit of lead belcher just to quickly pop a little dot on there, cover up that overspill, which I didn't notice. Nice and simple. Right. Let's go over these bits. Now you'll notice I'm not actually too worried about trying to stick my brush in all the way around these bits, because it's very hard. And to be honest, if it's hard to get my brush to, I probably can't see it, so I'm not going to worry about it. And it's also all been zenithalled, so there's a good chance that is going to be dark enough, especially with the wash that goes on it, that it will just look like hopefully a nice natural blend into shadow. I would argue that this is obviously one of the amazing parts about the 8mm scale, is that you can get away with little mistakes and whatnot, which is true. And I wouldn't also call them mistakes, that was very much intentional. You can get away with these sort of lazy techniques. Let's call them lazy techniques, because that's what I refer to them as. They're not lazy, really. It's just a way of painting that suits me and might suit you. But what it does is it does make it a lot easier to do that at the 8mm scale, because there's a lot more forgiveness. When you think about when you're playing the game, you really are looking at these things from so far away most of the time that you're never going to notice any small imperfections. Realistically, anyway. Now, it's a little bit different for us, because we obviously intend to do a lot of recording of our models and our games, and there will be a lot of close-ups and whatnot, so there is an element to the way we have to do it, where we do have to put that little bit of extra effort in, just to make sure that it reads nicely on camera, but we still don't have to go to the immense effort that some people would go to, which, if that's the way you like to paint, fabulous. I mean, Golden Demon winners and what is it, parade ready painters, I think that's the common term used by Games Workshop. They are phenomenal and they look amazing, but the time investment required and the skill level can be, in some cases, just out of this world. And I think for quite a few people in the hobby, it's very much the painting side is either a chore or just isn't what they're good at or what they want to spend their time on. They want the models to play games. Or, well, yeah, I think, yeah. So that does lead to a certain degree of a misconception where everything has to be this amazingly painted model. But for those of us that just like nice pretty models that are functional and at least look nice, they don't have to look amazing, and being a slightly lazier painter and not being too worried about every minute detail is quite nice. Makes the process much more palatable. And I'll be honest, I don't particularly enjoy the painting side of the hobby. I do to a certain degree, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't do it at all, but it is probably my least favourite part of the hobby, and I much prefer making rules and building cool stuff, and obviously playing the game. And I'm very much more of a builder than a painter, which is why I've been having quite good fun taking a little break from doing all these models, actually making some terrain. It's been quite fun. Down to paint the terrain, which is the less fun side for me. But paint terrain is, again, another order of magnitude more forgiving, because, again, you could put in all the same effort that you would on your standard models, on your terrain, and they would look lovely. They would look phenomenal. But it wouldn't be necessary, because they are not the focal point of the game. They are not what you're going to be spending the vast amount of time interacting with. So you really don't need to, and I would probably argue you shouldn't spend as much time on the terrain. Unless, again, caveat, the painting side is the side that you enjoy most in the hobby. But if it's not, and your main focus is on models or gaming or lore, then don't spend that extra time painting up these sort of heavy metal style terrain pieces. Just do dry brushing, quick dirty washes, and call it done. And you'll get results that look good. Yes, they won't be winning you competitions, but again, that's not the goal. They're just there to add environmental feel and a bit of background aesthetic to the tabletop. And if you check out our TikTok account and or our Instagram, you will see that I've, as of recording, just posted up from yesterday a game where we're using for the first time a fully painted set of terrain for Legions that I had only just, literally the same day, finished. And I have to say, I think I did a pretty good job. And I can also tell you that almost all of it was dry brushes and washes. And an airbrush, obviously. I almost didn't need to pick up a brush for the entire process. There was almost no brush work in that whatsoever. With obviously the mild exception of using a dry brush and a shade brush, but no traditional brush. I don't think I picked up a traditional brush at all for any of that terrain that is on that video. Or on those videos, on those reels, and I think they work perfectly for what they do, for what they're for. Could they have been better? Sure. Could you do better? Absolutely. Do they need to be better? Not at all. They perfectly perform their function. hopefully the videos kind of show that. And as time progresses, more terrain is going to be done, and it will be done in more of the same style. So hopefully we'll have more to show soon. In fact, we will show more soon, because my major project this week is painting up some Legion scale buildings for City Fight from my Hive City board, or board layout if you like, which has already been 3D printed, so I'm using 3D printed models for these. These are models that I've acquired from Colts 3D. I can't remember who the designer was, but they're not hard to find, I can assure you. And they are going to serve their purpose as our City Fight buildings for the time being, and I've got some other bits and pieces as well just to spice things up. I've got loads of ideas for terrain I want to do, including some custom terrain which I'll be designing and making, and potentially will make available for sale as well. And that will all be coming in the sort of next few months. And I kind of want to, my effort is going to be on making all this terrain, so that we can start actually filming some videos to put on YouTube, some proper model based videos rather than podcasts and streams. So we're looking at battle reports and how to play series, which I mentioned on the previous hobby haul, which is going to focus very much on teaching you how to play Legions Imperialis. And obviously to do that, I'm going to need some nice terrain to show off all of the minutiae of playing the game and to make it a little bit more interesting. So it's one of the reasons why, although I went from a empty pile of shame to a huge pile of shame thanks to Christmas, and my goal was to get through it all as soon as possible, the necessity of running this channel has meant that I actually have to switch focus now and focus more on getting the terrain done, because I already have a significant number of models that I don't need any of the new models painted and ready to go. As much as it'd be nice to have them all done so that I can obviously use them all immediately, it's just not going to be practical for the needs of the channel at the moment. So they will be done, and one of the things I'll be using these hobby hauls for is to sort of chip away at them as we go through. So you'll get to see some of that progress live. I'm not going to do the terrain on the hobby hauls, because again they really do they are really quick and dirty paint jobs and schemes, and some of them, especially my sort of custom ones, I want to keep on the down low until they're done and they're ready, because the idea will be that they will become available products for Mead Hall to present to you, the community, in the future. So I'm going to keep them off. Off the streams, but you will be able to see them hopefully in the nearest future featured in our videos, and they will be all over the social media as well. So you can always keep track of that. We do post just about every day on the socials, and at the moment the YouTube is every couple of weeks. No, sorry, we do post something every week now. Yeah, we post the recordings from the live streams every week, and every couple of weeks, give or take, we also release a podcast, which you can obviously go and watch at your own leisure. We will be introducing D&D streams very soon. That's all been planned out, and we are pretty much ready to go. We're just figuring out a timeline now to make sure everyone's available. And we are, as I say, we're building up towards being able to start releasing some Legions content in the near future. Obviously we're doing this as a very small part-time, not even part-time technically, team. So it's going to take us a little while to get going, but hopefully when we get there we'll be able to offer something a bit unique. And something you've not seen before, hopefully. Or at least not too similar to what you've seen before. Obviously there's there's only so much one can do with certain formats, I think. Can I just do that with the bigger brush? Guess I could get away with using that bigger brush for all of it. And you might notice this is something I've done different to the other ones. I'll quickly show you. Look, you can see I've left that silver panel blank there, or unpainted red, and I've painted it red on this one. That's because on all of my other knights I've actually done the hatches in black. So I'm now and I've only really just noticed on these models that they even have the hatches on the top. So I am thinking I might have to go back in and paint those hatches in black. But I want to test it on this one, see how easy it is to paint that hatch. And it doesn't look like it's too bad. Obviously the risk of repainting models is they've already got washes on them. And doing targeted washes like that is a pain. So I want to see if I can comfortably paint those in reliably, because I have got not only those 6 there to do, but I've also got the other 9 from the other set that I did a few weeks ago, which could be a little bit of a pain if it's not easy to do. And that depends on how good the recess is to help guide the brush. And how steady my hands are really. So we'll see how that goes. But it's looking okay so far, so we might go in and do that. Test it on this one. If I don't like it, or if it becomes a bit difficult, I'll just ignore it. To be perfectly honest, I don't do anything that is too laborious or painful to do. I just avoid it. I don't want the painting to be stressful or unfun. At the end of the day, this is a hobby and it's supposed to be fun. Not supposed to be work, it's not supposed to feel like work. Obviously there's an element of that I suppose you can't always avoid, but where we can, we will. Sometimes you have to put a little bit of work in to make fun, but and that is quite possibly the truest statement of Warhammer, really, is in order to have fun with this hobby you do need to put some effort. It's not like a video game where you can just sort of pick up and play based on someone else's hard work and dedication. But they obviously all video games absolutely have their place in the entertainment area, because just you can switch off and play, and trust me, it's something that all of us enjoy. Can't say it's something I've had the luxury of being able to do much at the moment, but it will happen. I will get there. Okay, so that's the red on this one done already, so we need to get some black on it now. And my black of choice, Black Legion, just covers really well. I do have the Black Templar contrast as well. I know some people prefer that one. Honestly, I think Black Legion is infinitely better. Black Templar definitely has its place if you want to sort of if you do want to leave a bit of transparency. But if you want a nice solid colour, Black Legion is way better. And for whatever reason as well, despite the fact that it being a contrast paint, Black Legion does seem to cover even better than the Abaddon Black, which really doesn't sound like it should, because it's a contrast paint. It's not supposed to outperform a base paint in terms of coverage, but it does. It really, really does. Because I can get away with a single coat of Black Legion, whereas Abaddon Black, I always find, is never quite a full coverage on that first application. Not unless you cake it on, and again, you don't want to cake on. Even when you're trying to be quick and nasty with your paint jobs, you still don't want to cake the paint on, because that has a lot of problems. Whereas this contrast paint just works, single coat. And depending on your undercoat as well, sometimes that little bit of transparency just seems to work with the Black Legion, which wouldn't work with Abaddon Black. And you can put this on a reasonably thick, I suppose, but it's not really thick, it's just not overly thinned. In fact, it's not thinned at all. One of the great things about contrast paints is they work right out of the bottle in terms of transferring them to drop bottles. You don't need to thin them, you just pour straight out, no problems. The other thing I like about them is they work immediately in an airbrush. There is no thinning required. They just work. And as someone who likes airbrushing, it's great fun. Now, they do have a transparent quality, which does mean you need to pick your undercoat carefully to get the effect you want. And you can layer it as well, and they will eventually build up a nice strong saturated colour. But I do tend to find that you still, if you're using a contrast or an airbrush, you want the undercoat to come through a little bit. And I tend to do it over metallics, and it comes out beautifully. Differently to how it would be from a brush application, because it doesn't quite have the same stretch and pull as it would for a brush, but it does work. Okay, let's see how this goes down. Again, I'm relying on the sort of the flowing nature of the Black Legion here to kind of run into the recess of this armour panel, so that it's not too much, it's not entirely my brushwork that's doing the work here, it's actually the contrast paint doing its thing, which means hopefully I can paint that armour panel in. Accurately, without messing up the paintwork. It does look alright. It has overspilled a tiny bit. It's a minute little bit there, which you probably cannot even see. To be fair, I can barely see it, so I think that's probably an indicator that we could do that. And probably get away with it quite well. And just compare it to that one as well. It does stand out. Okay. Might just revisit these while we're here, actually. So I've got loads of black on my paintbrush. I don't know what is going on, but someone's banging away in this building. I'm not sure what they're up to. Black is going on. Looking alright. I've not switched to a thinner brush here either, so hopefully I can get away with using this brush as well to get the colour down reasonably quick. Obviously without rushing, because we really don't want to nick any of that washed panel, because that would be a bit of a travesty. Yeah, okay. That seems to work. We'll go with that. Let that dry. That won't take too long. Obviously, I won't need to wash that because it's a contrast anyway. It just kind of works. Now, there is a little visor thing underneath there, but I genuinely think that might be too much of a pain in the backside to try and paint underneath that little melter gun. So we'll probably ignore that. I don't think that'll be necessary to go in and pick out. And it's also, on this model, it is barely perceptible because it's a very, very tiny detail. It's not very proud of the model. So actually hitting that with the paintbrush would be an absolute pain. So I'm happy with that. I think we'll do the panel, but I'm not going to do the little what's it called, viewport that's barely perceptible on it anyway. So again, that's just a case of I've identified something that would probably be pain to paint. I don't want to do it, so I'm just going to ignore it. Which is how we like to paint. We paint what we want and leave the rest. So I think the interesting thing to sort of mention, I suppose, is obviously I spoke about the game that we played yesterday, which had or featured our new painted terrain, which is not, we haven't got a lot. It's a bunch of rock faces or plateaus and some alien forests, and I've got some other bits as well that's half done, which I'm working on, but I'm waiting for some more materials to arrive before I can finish those. To go with our sort of wasteland board, which is great. But the most interesting thing about yesterday's game was we were trying out a new set of rules which I've written to help, in my opinion, make the games of Legions Imperialis feel much more engaging. And the way I've done that is quite simple. I say simple, it's not simple, but the idea is simple. And that is to add or change the way secondaries scoring works in Legions. Because in Legions there's only 6 secondaries you can take for the game. And they are all end game achieving secondaries. You only score points at the end of the game. You can only pick 2, and they are active for the entire game, and you're just working towards those goals, which is okay, but doesn't really provide the same level of engagement as I find in 40k secondary system, which, as much as some people besmirch the name of 10th edition, I think the way they've handled secondaries and in their missions is really good and really engaging and really fun. So using that as inspiration, I have created a set of tactical secondaries for Legions. But I've gone a little bit further and tried to design them so that the attacker and defender decks are actually distinct. They are actually unique. You do feel like you have attacker and defender objectives, which helps you theme what you're doing with your army, so it feels more like you're on the defense or on the offense. And we played our first game yesterday, and one of the things I also decided to do is I also decided to rewrite or write some new missions to go alongside them, so that they're designed with the secondaries in mind, rather than trying to shoehorn them into the official missions. Which, to be honest, I think they probably will work with the standard missions, and they should do in theory. But I decided to write some missions, more thematic, more narrative-based missions that would also work alongside my secondaries. And we played our first game yesterday, and it was a thoroughly enjoyable game. The game we played with the new mission and the new secondaries, we went all the way to round 5 to the very last activation before we actually determined who won and lost. It was that close. So we felt like it was a nail-biting game from the instant we put the models down to the very last shots of the game. And that, for me, does sort of indicate that the system has worked. Whether it's perfect and whether it's balanced or not, completely, I don't know. I've done my best based on my knowledge of 40k and Legions and all the different rule sets. I've done my best to balance it without any playtesting, and that's what we're obviously doing now, is we're now playtesting these rules and actually feeling them out and seeing how they work, whether they feel balanced, whether there feels like a distinct advantage for one side or the other. But so far, we've had success in our first game. Our first game felt very nail-bitey. It did not feel like one side had an advantage. It did not in any way feel out of place. Maybe that was just luck. First game, first attempt, first try, beginner's luck. But I'm quietly confident that I think I've done a pretty good job of making something that feels balanced. But we won't know for sure until we've playtested a bit more. And I need to get the rest of the team involved in that as well, so that we've got a few more perspectives and opportunities to see if someone can break it. As we know, the more playtesting, the better. So what we'll do is we'll playtest them a few times each between us, and then what I'll do is I'll compile a document which I'll release for free online, which anyone can use, and you guys can give it a go and maybe give us feedback on what you think and how you found the game with these new rules in place. But I'm hoping they'll be enjoyable, and I'm hoping they'll improve the game to a certain degree. And I think, as I say, I've banged on about how good the rules are for Legions so many times in so many videos and on many, if not every, live stream I've done. And I stand by it. The game system's great. It works. It's fantastic. It's really fun. But it's not perfect. And even with the changes I'm trying out and proposing, it still probably won't be perfect. But I reckon with a few small tweaks, it will be as close to perfect as you can get for any game that's as complex as a Warhammer game. And that's the problem with these games, is they are very complex with lots of interactions and rules that sadly does make it almost impossible to perfectly balance. Let alone the fact that you've also got to account for the fact that dice rolls are involved, which means that randomization element also makes it hard to determine whether something is balanced or not, because there's an element of randomness that you have to account for. You know, when you play tested the game once, was it just you got really lucky with dice rolls? Or vice versa? Did that make it feel more or less balanced because of the randomness element? And that's why you need to playtest these things quite a lot. And I think that's possibly something where Games Workshop may or may not have fallen short a little bit, because they are very protective of their rules, and they don't really like to release them too early or to enough people, I think, to properly playtest them. And to playtest a system like that, or as complicated as 40k, you need a massive pool of data to accurately determine whether something is balanced. And there's no getting around that. Well, I suppose in theory you could potentially try and automate it to a certain degree with computers and AI, but anyone who knows anything about computers will know that there is no such thing as truly random. Therefore, there will be some element of bias in there, or a level of predictability that is always going to be possible, or by its very nature a part of the problem. So even that's not really the optimal choice. So what you really want is a massive pool of players playing the game and rolling dice to try out all of these different things. But they are very hesitant to let people do it. And to a certain degree I kind of get it, because they do trust these people not to release their information publicly, which to a degree I kind of get, but let's be honest, Games Workshop make most of their money on models, not rules. And what they should really do is they should work on making a game that works as best as they can and stick with it. And playtest the living daylights out of it. And just keep cranking out cool models and lore, and people will still be buying and be interested. But just make a game system that works, that doesn't need constantly changing or editing. Sure, keep FAQs up and stuff like that, but get the edition into a place where it works, and instead of moving on to the next edition, just fine-tune the system you've got and add the new stuff. Come up with new game modes, stuff like that. I mean, Warhammer's Horde mode, for example, was a fantastic addition to 10th edition, and that's something that Games Workshop should have done. Really, they should have, one could argue, I suppose, they should have picked an edition that worked. Was it 8th or 9th edition? I think 9th edition. Was 9th edition that quite well balanced towards the end? I think it was. One of the more recent editions felt like it was in a really good place, and then they uphauled it all, and it all went out the window a little bit. I think that might have been 9th into 10th. And don't get me wrong, I think 10th works really well for the most part, and it seems to be quite well balanced based on information released by Games Workshop. but I think they if they focus on an edition that everyone, not everyone, but most people are happy with, because you're never going to please everybody. Make a version of the game that just works, is as balanced as you can make it, and then just keep modifying or updating what they already have to make the game as balanced as physically possible. And you're still going to sell models. Yes, okay, you're not going to be selling codexes every 3 years, but let's be honest, I mean, over time that money must be coming down. People are getting less and less inclined to buy those codexes and just start grabbing them from wherever they can from other sources. And there's plenty of game systems out there, and more coming out now, where the rules are free, and people are just going to start flocking to these other ideas. And they don't, as I say, the Games Auction aren't making their money from those rules. At least, I don't think they are. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe codex sales and rulebook sales and their erratas and their data cards and all of that. Maybe that is what makes them the most money. Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. But, sure, I suppose there is a non-zero chance that might be true. But let's face it, it's not. They're making their money from models. For the most part. And they can still sell models by keeping a static game system that works. And I think that's where they should go, or should have gone. Maybe they still... Well, I mean, they still can. Maybe 10th edition is going to be the formula. Maybe they could stick to 10th as the formula. I mean, they could even re-release codexes every few years, I suppose, in theory. I don't know. I like that idea. I don't think they should be charged with the rules, to be honest. And I think that's definitely not an uncommon statement. I've heard that come up a lot on a lot of people's videos. And I agree. I don't think that's what they should be focusing on. I'd rather they focused on getting the edition right, not rewriting the edition constantly. And it shouldn't be the main focus of where they're trying to make their money from. And I suppose part of them are, I suppose you do get that big event cycle, I suppose, with the new edition coming out, Leviathan releases and Indomitus and all of that. But they don't need to do an edition for that. They don't need to change every rule or every datasheet to get that kind of hype. You can do the same with just doing a campaign series where you introduce new models, new units for factions, and maybe introduce a new game mode or terrain sets or big narrative event with book tie-ins and stuff like that. You can still do all of that. You don't need to change the way the game works to have a big release wave like that. People are going to be just as excited by the concept of, here's the... I don't know, let's stick to something that we know already exists. So let's go with, here is the Pariah Nexus campaign, the Silent King and his new, I don't know, Pharaon units that are now being brought in as new HQs for the Necrons, a bunch of new Canoptech units and whatever it is, and the Space Marines come out with all of their new biker units or something, I don't know. Jagatai Khan comes back with the White Scars. And, that's still going to build the same level of hype. People are still going to be interested in that. Because that's really, I think, what most people are excited about when the additions happen. Is it's not really the addition that excites people most of the time. It's all the new miniatures. And sometimes, and for some people, it's the lore changes or advancements. Yes, some people are obviously interested in the rules. I mean, everyone, to a certain degree, I think, who plays the game is going to be interested in the rules, but that's not what they're excited to spend their money on. In fact, quite the opposite. People don't want to spend their money on rules. They want to spend their money on toys. Because at the end of the day, all of us Warhammer hobbyists are just big kids and we like big flashy toys. Some of us like lots of big flashy toys. So why not just make a game system that works, support it, improve it, get it working, and just focus on building new armies and new models. Maybe not too many new armies, I don't know. I mean, how many armies could they add into 40k? I mean, I suppose sky's the limit, really. Especially if they actually gave Xenos a bit more of a focus. Might be a little hint about a video coming out this week. But it's things like that that could be improved. Or how I think they could improve their rules and the way they do them. And I think that might be one of the advantages of Legions is they probably won't get the rapid turnaround of rules, which actually I think will be a benefit for the system, because the system works. It does work. And with a few community-led modifications, the game will just get better. And I don't think we need to rely on Games Workshop for that. In fact, I think we shouldn't rely on Games Workshop for that, quite frankly. I don't want them to come in and change the way Legions works dramatically. I'd be quite happy for them to keep releasing all the models and campaign books and stuff, but I'd be quite happy for them to forget to modify the core rules for the next 5-10 years. As long as they keep releasing the models for it, I'm good. I'm happy. As long as they keep supporting it in that way, that's all I care about. Keep giving me cool models to put on the table. And there is still a huge swathe of models they can release to this game system. I mean, there's already quite a substantial number of models anyway. Obviously all based on the heresy lines. I think the only time I would be happy for them to change the rules, so to speak, is if they did change it to bring it into the 40k setting officially and bring in the 40k factions like the Eldari, the Drukhari, Necrons, Tyranids, all of that jazz, which could be something they do in the future. And it could be something they could do. I mean, they've obviously not planned for it, I don't think. There doesn't seem to be any indication that has been on their radar. Although, I'd like to think that someone up there in the great halls of Warhammer have actually thought, oh, this could be a winner. And I think it could be. And you never know. Someone may be working on it. Maybe I'm wrong, and we will eventually see 40k in 8mm. And if they do that, and that's when they decide to do a rules change to account for all of the new stuff that would bring, well, I could accept that. As long as they don't fundamentally change the game too much, because, again, it just works. They don't need to do anything drastic. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna plug my own designs in there and say, look, you don't need to do much. Just take the additions that I've done, and they'll probably work. Or do something similar. You know, try not to sound too big-headed. I think my system does work, but I'm sure someone out there could possibly do something better. And that's fine. If someone can come up with something better that works, go for it. I'm all for it. I'd rather have a system that works well than something that I've made. I'm just making the modifications to a system that I love because I think it could be better. And these are the ways I think it will work to be better. And you might not like all of the changes that I'm proposing or will propose, and that's fine. You could just cherry pick the bits you like for your own games. Set up your own house rules. You could play by Games Workshop official rules as written. You could play the Mead Hall Compendium pack if you like. I don't know what we'll call it yet. Which has all of our Mead Hall house rules or Mead Hall rules. Or you could cherry pick your own, add your own, and do your own version, your own house rules. There is nothing wrong with that. It's your game. It's your way to play and have fun. Don't let anyone else tell you how to play the game. Not even Games Workshop. It's not like they've got Assassinorum agents waiting to take you out if you decide to change how you play the game. It wouldn't benefit them to do that anyway. Some people even play older editions. It's definitely a thing. You don't have to follow the most recent game either. If you prefer an older edition, there's no reason you can't go back and play an older edition. All the rules are still viable. As long as the models still exist, which they almost all do. Depends on how far back you go, obviously. Obviously, the further you go back, certain models do exist that don't have rules. But then that could be a case of you get the opportunity to write those rules for yourself. And to be honest, writing the rules ain't too difficult. Normally there's normally plenty of rules already existing that you can sort of cannibalise to make something that's reasonably balanced. You just might need to adjust a few things, or maybe even make up an entirely new idea or rule to make something work. But it's not normally that hard. I mean, I've made units for Legions. Well, I say units. No, I have made it. I've made a start on a Necron Codex. Even got some Necron models. And made rules for a Stormbird gunship for my Astartes. Because Stormbirds are cool. And I just did that based on the models that already existed and sort of guesstimated what I thought would work. I have to say, rules I've written so far all seem to work reasonably well. I don't think it's really that hard. And if you're not sure, playtest. Ask other people's opinions, get some ideas, chat to each other. Between all of us, we can make whatever we want. We can make the game whatever we want it to be. And I think that is the real beauty of this game and this hobby. It is a hobby, and we can do what we want with it to a degree. Right, almost got all the bronze done on this guy. I've got to do a little bit of greys and base coating on that basing piece there. Now again, if you haven't seen the previous streams regarding the way I paint my knights, it's when I'm doing the bronzes and stuff, I just pick out bits that look like they should be a different metallic colour to the undersuit and just slap Rune Lord on it. Once all the washes have gone down, I then go through and do a second wash of various tones just to help shift the colours a little bit on certain elements. And I just do that chassis by chassis, so I know that these nodules and all my armigers are painted in Rune Lord, so they'll all get painted in Rune Lord. Some of the knight kits all have similar features, like these exhaust things or power plants, whatever they're called. I paint those in bronze as a standard. There you go. And it's always nice to have it when I've already done one, to have a reference. And all the knights seem to have these little, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it's going to be very hard to see, but right here they have like a little circular nodule with 3 little distinct lines in it. Don't know what it is, just a bit of greebling. I always paint those in the copper colour as well, or brass colour, don't know why, just it's an element on one of the knight models. I decided, oh, I'm going to paint that a different colour so it stands out, breaks up the silhouette a little bit. Turns out that that little thing is pretty much on every knight chassis. So every time I see it now on a knight, I think, oh, I've got to paint that this colour just so it all matches. So where possible, I try to keep some elements uniform so that we know what we're doing, but I don't go ahead and spend too much time painting every single potential detail in every single potential colour you could. Just don't see the point. As long as it's visually interesting and looks nice, that's all that matters. I've started doing all the back details. Normally I do all the armour bits first, and I haven't done the armour on the shoulders yet. But I'll continue doing what I'm doing now. Hopefully remember to do the shoulders. Should do. Shoulders are pretty obvious. The amount of times I've gone through and painted one of these up and gone to start washing it and then suddenly realised I've missed something. Drives me nutty when I do that. But sadly, it's an all too common occurrence. Okay. These exhausts, do I just paint the top bits? Yeah. Okay. I always paint the pistons as well in a separate colour. Don't know why, just thought that's a very obvious little piece to paint, so we'll do that. Which is quite interesting because some of the knights have really prominent pistons on their legs and their arms. Some really don't. I think the Questoris pattern knights, they don't really have very many visible ones. So there's seems to be significantly less bronze on them. But any of these sort of like more elongated knights have lots of visible pipes and pistons. So they have quite a few of them. Cerastus ones in particular, their legs are just like massive hydraulic pistons. So their legs are almost entirely this colour, I think. But you know, it all works, it all makes it stand out and makes them look different and cool. And I do love the Cerastus Knights. I've only got the Knight Lancers at the moment, because that's what came in the you get 4 of those in the the Battle Force box, or whatever it's called. and they're very cool. And I've played them in game now. They are very fun. I am definitely looking at getting my hands on some more, but probably looking. Well, I mean, I want another box of Lancers at least, so that I've got 2 units of 3, because they come in 3s, but they're sold in 2s, which is a little bit awkward for numbers. And I also want I want Ascarons and Castigators as well, just so that I've got the full range of options there when it comes to Night Bodies. And the Cerastus pattern Knights are definitely my favourite. I mean, I quite like the Questoris actually. I've become quite a fan of them. I've also become quite a fan of Armiger class Knights as well. To be honest, I'm just a fan of all the Knights. I don't know why I'm going through them all. I like them all. There's not a Knight I don't like. I've seen some people sort of have differing opinions on the likes of the Dominus class Knights, which aren't in Legion scale at the moment, which I'm hoping they do come to Legion scale, because I know some people don't like them, but I do. I like the Dominus class Knight. I think it looks cool. I know the guy from Eons of Battle, I think his name's Jay, which is fun for me because that's my name. I know he's not a fan of them. I know he's built one and painted it, and it looks fantastic. But he certainly said in the videos that he doesn't like them. I think they might have grown on him a little bit in the video where he actually painted one. But I think it's a nice kit. I think it's quite cool. It's a nice sort of midpoint between the Questoris and the Cerastus. It's like a mobile gun platform, whereas the Questoris is definitely like a jack of all trades knight suit that can kind of operate as a frontliner, a melee machine, a support unit. Obviously, the Armigers are as close to a chaff unit as you can get for a knight army. And to be fair, they work quite well at that in Legion scale, certainly. But then your Cerastus pattern Knights definitely are much more aggressive. I mean, the Lancer can be defensive because it's got the big shield, but it's also only got a spear, so it's very much a tool of close quarters combat. And to be honest, all of the Cerastus patterns are mid to close range support platforms that want to be in melee. Their guns are kind of secondary almost for a lot of fights. The Questoris can kind of comfortably suit both plays. The Armigers, depending on the loadout, is a bit more specialised. But obviously smaller scale, more of the objective grabbers really. So the only way to get like a proper fire support platform in Knights, you have to go all the way up to the Near Titan scale Acastus Knights, and they are huge. They are very big. They are not much smaller than a Warhound. So it'd be nice to have a Dominus class Knight in Legions, because then it'll give you a sort of a midpoint Bastion unit, I think is the Legion's term for it. Okay, so that's one Armiger Knight painted up, ready for washing. So it does need just need to give it a few minutes just to let some of those paints dry off, and then we can whack the wash on it, and we can start on the other two. So not too bad. Taking a little bit longer to get to that point, but then again, started a bit later, had a bit of a chat. Probably should get these 3 done by the end of the stream. Should do. But before that, I do need to take a quick break for a minute. I don't normally do that in the middle of the streams, but it's been a bit of a long day, and or a bit of a confusing day today. I've had lots of things going on this morning, so I need a little break just to Catch your breath, grab a bit more to drink, make sure I'm all sorted. So give me about 10 minutes or so and I'll be back. So see you shortly. Hello, welcome back. So, sorry about that short break. Right, let's crack on. So we're going to, well, we were going to whack the wash on that, but actually what we need to do is quickly go over those, that little basing bit there. Just pop a bit of grey on the sort of ground covery bit, and then we're going to whack a bit of grey sear over the bones. And then we need to give it a quick wash. Now the way I like to do the bones as well, it's quite interesting. I say quite interesting, because I like to use the skeleton horde contrast over the bones, but I do find that the coverage is not amazing. It's good, but it's not amazing. And what I have found to work, particularly on the basing anyway, I'm not sure if it would work on your standard skeletons for your AOS or fantasy models, but using a skeleton horde over the bones and then using the same null and oil wash that I would on anything else just helps to make that colour work a bit better. Don't know why, it just seems to work. And I only discovered that by accident when I accidentally chucked null and oil over my bones on one of my models a while back and noticed that it actually improved the colour. So I would say win-win. I'm just gonna, so these little basin bits, these are little 3D printed basin bits. They're actually meant for 40k. I went through and found all the ones that I thought would scale down okay to 8mm. I mean, some of them are a little bit maybe out of scale potentially. I mean, I think this little skeleton here might be quite large for scale, but you can always hand wave that as it's a Xenos bone from a particularly large Xenos species or something, or hand wave it away as an Ogren corpse maybe. Are you really that worried? It sells the idea, and yes, in theory it might be a bit big, but it's fine. Got a similar thing with if I pull this thing up, that shell on the base there. It's a huge shell, but it might be a little bit too big in theory for your average shell, but you know, this is the world of titans and whatnot, so could very well be a titan shell of some description. So let's grab a bit of grace here to finish that base off. Oh, hello. Interesting. Okay. Hi Zeta. I'm not going to dig into that last statement. Just I'm not. All I can say is I guess you had a good time on stream. And I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah, you have got yourself a Titan box. Gonna challenge me for the being the Titan Princeps of the channel. I didn't realise your printer wasn't running. When did that start running? Oh, it's recent then. I was going to say, you haven't mentioned it before now. Oh, okay. Take it now it's back up and running. It wasn't too big of an issue to fix then. really? Interesting. Very interesting. Well, glad you got it up and running. I suppose that means that you're now going to pester me live on camera to send you files now. Because I may have forgotten to send those files last week when you asked me. Yeah. I thought I'd preempt you there because I know what is coming. All right. Well, I'll do that today. I was planning on taking some time off today, as I've not taken any real time off this week, so I can quickly do that when I finish up here, because I won't be moving on to any other projects this afternoon, which is normally what happens when I finish on a stream. I immediately go and start building and painting new stuff. But today I'm going to take a break from that. Yes, the Vanguard Lance, I think. On a different note, I was looking at the Knights list for Legions. Yep. So I can run a bunch of Lancers and then little Armigers at the bottom. Yep. Yeah, no, the Vanguard Lance is a phenomenal little formation. I've used it a few times myself, hence why I have so many Armigers now. 18. And you can run them in units of 9. But yes, I think you can run quite a few in the Vanguard Lance. I think you've got 1 compulsory and 2 optional slots, I think. So in theory you could run 27 Armigers in that little formation, which would be insane. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but you could. Might be a good idea. I'm not saying you couldn't. In fact, what I'm saying, to be perfectly honest with you there, is that I probably will at some point. There's a reason I already have 18. There might be another 9 at some point. I'm just saying. Not anytime soon. Ish. Well, actually, not anytime soon. I've got so many other things to do first, but I will do another. I would definitely do another 9 at some point in the I say nearish future, probably months from now, but especially as I don't actually have all of the Cerastus notes I want yet. So we had a I spoke about this earlier on the stream, you should be, I would imagine, well aware of the game myself and ours played yesterday with the new rules I wrote, and yeah, they worked very well. I think you'll be I think you might be quite interested to give them a go. Yeah, so tried out the new tactical secondaries I came up with, but I also wrote a new I've written 4 at the moment missions as well to complement the secondaries, because although I think the secondaries will in theory work with the core book missions, they should do. I had the idea that it would also be quite fun to make some more narrative based missions using some ideas that I've had for a while. So I just wrote a few missions. As I say, I've written 4. We tested one out with the secondaries yesterday, and no word of the lie, the game went to the final activation of round 5, and we were still umming and ahhing who was going to win. It all came down to the last activation. Yeah, That's exactly exactly our sentiment. I mean, the game was engaging all the way through. I mean, there was a point in turn 3 where I was thinking, okay, this is definitely going one way, but there was potential for it to go the other, and it did. It did go the other way, and it was nice to play a game where, although you think you know where you're at by turn 3, which is in most games in Warhammer in general, Legions, 40k, even Kill Team, I think, you pretty much go to, yes, turn 3, we know that the game's over now. But in this game, it was very much, no, we think we know where it's going, but it changed, and it could change. 9 Lancers and 18 Armigers is worth 4,000 points. 12 Lancers. Yeah, because I think you get 3. You have to have 2 compulsory two compulsory casters detachments, and then I think you get 1 optional, which would, or is it 2 optional? Because that would be 12. Yeah, that would be a lot of Cerastus patterns. 2 optional, yeah. Yes, that would be a lot of Cerastus Knights. Which obviously you don't have to just take Lancers either. Although, no, I would like to say the Lancers are definitely the best one for that detachment, but the Acastus and the Acheron and the Cerasta. No, trying to remember my names now. Acastus is the big knight. Castigator. There you go. Yes, the Castigator and the Acheron are both actually really good chassis of the Cerastus as well, and also are both quite close range and both have good melee options. So any of the Cerastus patterns benefit massively from that formation. I mean, it's close enough to 4,000 points. But yes, would it be better to run 1 of each in each grouping of 3? No. It definitely wouldn't be. Only in the sense that I think you can probably mix Castigators and Acherons reasonably well, because they more or less follow the same. They have a very similar role in what they do in the game, I would think, if memory serves. I think the Acheron definitely is slightly better in combat against certain things than the Castigator, but then the Castigator's got slightly better shooting in terms of range and damaging vehicles, if memory serves. Whereas the Acheron is very much burn things from a distance, particularly. I do dislike flamers. I don't dislike them in Legions though, because Legions flamers are so much different because they're not random. They're not completely random and terrible. The Acheron flamer is actually quite nice. I think it's an 8-inch range, couple shots, -1. I think it hits on falls, something like that. Doesn't use the template, I don't think. But yeah, the Acheron's not bad. The flamer's actually pretty good. But those two they have overlap, so they kind of work together okay. I still don't like them. But the Lancer you want to run in groups of 3. You really do, because the way the way their lance weapon works, they've got the reach keyword, so they can overlap their attacks and fight you. Because normally when you're in combat, you can only fight the models you're in base-to-base contact with. But Lancers can fight models that are within 2 inches of them. So 3 Lancers next to each other can fight almost all the units they're engaged with, and can fight the ones that their allies are engaged with, because they count as engaged with everything within 2 inches. So you can, Yeah, literally, like they are literally a phalanx, a Grecian or hoplite phalanx for ancient history. So you want to run them in threes. Would be my opinion. I've run two of them in one formation at the moment. I haven't actually run all three in one formation because I actually have four. So I like getting them all on the table. So I end up using 2 units of two. Although one of my newer games, I probably will actually just run three and leave one off the board. Yeah, so you get that overlapping fight, which works really, really well. A Night Phalanx sounds a little nuts. Yes, especially when those big ion shields as well, ion gauntlet shields, are as good as they are. I mean, they are phenomenally good, although I have to say, in the game I played yesterday, some Alpha Legion Storm Eagle gunships, not even their proper weapon platforms, managed to gun down my Baron, which was not just a normal Lancer, but a Lancer with extra wounds, or an extra wound. And yeah, with a few las cannon shots and a couple of missiles, I failed all of my iron shield saves, and it died. I was gutted, especially as that was the only big knight I was bringing in. One from the back, two from the front. Yeah, so the ones in the back I didn't get an iron shield save against anyway. But yeah, it was still not fun. I was very upset by my Lancer just toppling over after it had done this epic charge. Because there was a point in that game where we basically it came to sort of the end sort of stage of the game, and all of our units were quite close to the centre of the table, and I just decided, because I was playing the attacker's role, and then I had a secondary that basically said that I wanted to be in the middle of the table, so I decided to just put charge order on everything I had, bar like one unit I think, and my entire army charged into the centre of the table, smashing into all of these Space Marine units. And there was just this little epic moment where a gunship was sort of hovering between in this sort of gap that was perfectly sized for my Lancer to charge down, and it charged straight down the centre at this flyer and took an overwatch, took damage from the overwatch, and then before I even got to fight, a couple of first fire units fired into its back and killed it. It was such a sad thing. Oh yeah, it looked cool in my head. It looked very cool, but it was not to be. Got gunned down as it got into combat. Very upsetting. Well, so bikes and speeders don't have hover; they have skimmer. As far as I'm aware, anyway, because I'm pretty sure only flyers have hover. And not all flyers. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm aware of the skimmer rule. Only because when I played against Joe Zeldar, obviously 90% of all his vehicles have skimmer. Yeah, they can do a little jumping into the air. They do have to be on the first fire order. So it does limit them in that regard, although that's also quite good, because they can first fire up above bits of terrain, which is very cool. The interesting thing is they counter staying at that height throughout the entire first fire subphase, so anything you've got on first fire can then target them. But as soon as first fire subphase is over, they swoop back down, which means if you don't have anything on first fire to fire back, those skimmer units are very safe. Which is very good for stuff like I would say it's probably I don't really know what the loadouts are really for the land speeders and stuff, but I can't imagine they've got that many big scary guns. But when we're talking about the Eldar and I was playing against all of those grav tanks, oh, that was scary. Grav tanks just suddenly flying up above a building and just unleashing a torrent of Eldar weapons fire. That was scary. There's 2 las cannons. Yeah, las cannons I wouldn't consider to be very scary. Usually, anyway. Obviously, my my Cerastus Lancer yesterday kind of proved me very wrong yesterday, but I think that was probably a bit of dice rolling luck and poor luck on my part, rather than the las cannons being that scary. Because in Legion scale, the las cannon really isn't that scary. It's quite a mid-range weapon, I'd say. So a couple of las cannons with a land speeder. I mean, obviously you get if that's 2 las cannons, it's 2 shots. I suppose you can take. Do they come in units of 4? I think it's quite a few las cannon shots. The short answer is no. But the better answer is, let me finish doing the red on this and I'll go and grab one. Because we can do that. Because the box is behind me somewhere, but I don't want this red paint to get saturated with water before I get back to it. Because that's the only problem I find with wet palettes, is they do actually they do bleed a bit of water into your paint, which actually makes them too diluted. Oh, okay, so they get 1 las cannon. Okay. Yeah, so detachments of 2. How many points are they? Because that'll be interesting. How many and what's the maximum detachment size you can get? That's the javelin. So 1 las cannon for 33 points. Speedy platform, can skimmer. I think you have 6 of them in a unit as well. Ooh, I don't know. It's not bad. So what's that going to be? Like 150 something odd points? Oh, it's 33 for 2. Ooh, it's 33 for 2. So 33 for 2. So it's less than 100 points, or literally like 99 points, for 6 las cannon shots. Oh, hello. Can purchase. Yep. Any javelin exchange at Sponson, mounted las cannon for a cyclone missile launcher for 2 extra points. Repurchase one of the following. What? Each javelin squadron. Okay. I wonder if the missile launchers are an even better option, because the Astartes missile launchers team that you get is a very good unit. 20 inches, 2 dice, hits on 4s, no AP, light ignores cover. Oh, does it only get the 1 profile? Does it not get a dual profile? Yeah, that's a bit naff. In which case, obviously, that would very much depend on what your targets are for the unit, really, which weapon you want. But yeah, I don't know why it costs an extra 2 points for that though. That does seem a bit odd to me. Yeah, I mean, less than 100 points, 6 las cannon shots, with the ability to skimmer, obviously fast, presuming they get outflank as well, because as a rule, which means they can come on from reserves on the side. That's pretty good. It's not bad. I wouldn't say it's the scariest thing in the world, but it's still pretty good. Could certainly do some damage. They'd also be great little units, especially with Jinx X Plus and Skimmer. Oh, they don't have outflank. That's interesting. yeah, no, if they had other Vanguard detachments. Okay. None of the Vanguard detachments get the outrider. Really? Is that? Do you get that from? Can you get that from the formation? Because there's this formation for the Astartes, isn't there? That gives them. That's designed around that. I assume that might be the special rule for the formation then. That would be my guess, anyway. Yeah, they do sound like pretty good little units, I have to say. I would say they'd be well worth their points. Just got to be a little bit shifty. Yeah, I figured. That's the problem when you absorb rules like I do. You tend to be able to work out where the rules are gonna be, even if you don't know exactly where they are. Yeah, I think a biker phalanx might be quite good. I know. Oh. Yeah, it could do. I still think I want to introduce the rule that Auxilia can use those termite drills, because they should be able to. Because I've double checked in Heresy, everyone can use them. Mechanicum, Space Marines, and Auxilia. Why on earth they've been put in the the marine only section at the moment, I have no idea. That's just annoying. But yeah, in terms of grabbing the bikers and stuff, because no one else is really doing bikers, yes, it's definitely a good shout. So obviously my Astartes are very much the air wing based ones. L's Night Lords are going to be mostly drop pod assault, with also interestingly like a mechanized division as well. So it's going to be lots of land raiders and tanks, with lots of drop pods and terminators. So that would give you the unique element if you were to go with the a biker force for your Astartes, because no one else, as you say, is really doing that. And it will be quite good, because I assume, I can't remember if Joe's Eldar have got bikes yet, but I imagine he will do, so it'd be quite cool to have a little biker engagement at some point. Yeah, land raiders look alright. To be honest, I think you can't really go wrong with transports in Legions at all, I don't think. They are great for pretty much their job. It's interesting, because even the Arvas Lighters, which I've got for my Auxilia, you wouldn't think, because I know some people, when they first sort of came out, obviously were wondering, well, it's 12 points for a flying transport, but it's got no guns. Once you drop your troops off, they don't really serve a purpose, which to a point is true. But 12 points for 2 spaces of transport that has fly is really, really, really good. But they also do have a purpose, because obviously you can just fly them off and keep them in reserve then for when you eventually want to bring them back on to move troops around, which with all the other flyers which have guns, you kind of want them to be on the table, so you're always risking them getting shot out the sky, whereas those ones you're probably not going to risk because there's no need to, so you just keep them off the board. But if you want to keep them on the board for extra bodies, well, you can go into hover mode and still have a scoring unit. Yes, no guns, but still quite useful to have, and will be useful to have when you start looking at my new secondary rules and stuff. There is definitely going to be a benefit to having units that you don't need or don't necessarily want to waste, so to speak, doing certain actions. What we got? Yep. Let's print a Mastodon at some point. Yes. Do. I'm sure Mastodons will be coming to the game at some point. I was actually looking at the Heresy line, and there's not many generic Heresy units left for the Space Marines. You've only really got a couple of the variants, I think, of a Predator that don't exist yet. There is one chassis of tank that I didn't even know existed until I was looking at the line. Some kind of artillery tank, which I didn't even know the Space Marines had. And it's not a Whirlwind. Obviously, there is a few other Rhino chassis that are missing, but whether they come in or not, we don't know. And then the only other things, really, are the Mastodon and the Fellblade variants. So, in terms of Legion scale, I think Space Marines are almost done for, like, generic stuff, which does mean that hopefully we will start to see some more specialist units coming out for Legions. There's a few infantry variants as well, I think, like the Scouts, and hopefully we'll see stuff like Desolator Marines, the melee ones, and Breacher Marines. And obviously it depends whether you count the different armour marks as releases as well, because then I suppose in theory you're then looking at the likes of Tartarus Terminators and Mark 3s and 4s and 5s. So I suppose there's options there as well. So I suppose my statement of them there not being many is probably not totally accurate, but then it does depend on how we define certain things and whether they're going to go to the effort of doing the different marks of armour at 8mm scale, which I think the jury might still be out on. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know that they would. But at the same time, I could see them doing it maybe without worrying about rules. They could just do them as options that you could just, you could just buy your Mark 3s, but they all use the same Astartes rules. I think that's definitely a plausible option. But yes, I don't think there's enough granularity at the infantry scale anyway for that to really work. Not in terms of Legion rules. Obviously, I know you've put in that message there about you've seen a game with those rules, or with rules for the different armour marks. I'm assuming by that statement you mean that's an 8mm scale game rather than a 28mm scale. But I don't think Legions itself has the granularity inherently in there for them to do the different armour marks with different rules anyway. But I could see them releasing them as like an option, but an aesthetic option rather than as a distinct unit per se. But then it depends whether they want to go to that. add effort, I suppose, but I can't imagine it's all that much effort, considering the sculpts will already exist for the 28mm scale. And there is a little bit of work on downscaling them, because you have to... There's a little bit of work involved, but it's nowhere near like building a whole new kit level of work. Okay, so yeah, it is an epic scale idea. Yeah, it could. I'm sure it could be done. I'm sure someone could figure it out. Well, I'm sure we could figure it out if we really wanted to, but I don't necessarily think it's necessary. I'd be rather adding in new factions, or just entirely new units and ideas, which obviously we've already started doing. Big one for me is how on earth they're going to do Primarchs. I'm still on that one. I still can't figure it out. I believe in my heart of hearts that they're going to happen. I just don't know how. Also, I was thinking about one of your counterpoints in one of our upcoming videos about discussing Primarchs, and you mentioned that obviously they're predominantly producing the Legion scale stuff from the plastic releases for Heresy. You are right, but you're not totally right, because quite a lot of the Legions kits are based on resin bit kits. A lot of them, actually, if you think about it. Every single flyer, for example, are all resin. None of them are plastic. Even the auxiliary ones are all resin kits. They're not plastic. And there's, yeah, and obviously there are some Legion scale resin kits as well. Oh, he's going digging. Yeah, there's a few. In fact, I think some of the Admech kits that they've done are still resin as well. I think. But it is interesting. It is interesting because they also said that everything that's in Legions will be, if it's in Legions, will eventually come out in plastic for Heresy. I'm just saying. I'm just going to point out that there are some knights. Yeah, you didn't get very far then. Yeah. There are some knights that are still in resin, which could be made into plastic. And technically, we now have plastic titans. So, was that a really poor choice of words from Games Workshop, or was that a really, really well hidden hint that plastic titans are actually going to be a thing? Oh yeah, yeah. There are a lot. A lot more than we thought, or certainly a lot more than you thought. So, regardless of whether the Primarchs are resin or not, they could do plastic mini ones. Oh, I totally agree. I cannot figure out in my head how on earth they'd do it. I really can't. Not a way that would be satisfying, or would work for everybody, or would be... I don't know. It would be a hard one. You'll have to educate me on what you mean by a clamshell box, because that's obviously some kind of nomenclature I'm not familiar with. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, my initial thought would be my initial thought would be they would just do like a first company box. The idea is that, generally speaking, you would only have a limited number of certain units anyway, so you would only ever buy that one box, and that would include your Primarch and their special honor guard unit, essentially. Yeah, but not just a unit, but like the entire formation of that unit, if that makes sense. So you'd get the full 8 bases or whatever it would be. And maybe package it in with some other generic units, maybe, that wouldn't feel out of place to be included, and would act as topper-ups maybe for other units. So like a first company box would just include, I don't know, a first company box for the Alpha Legion, for example, would have your Primarch, possibly 2. Would include 8 bases of Learning and Terminators, so that you'd have a full set of Learning and Terminators. And then, because you want to sell a box of a decent size, they would also give you enough to do another, 2 8 bases of standard Terminators, so they would act as topper-ups for the infantry box, so you'd just get your Terminator brick. That way you would only buy one of those, because then you'd get your stuff, but you'd also get some extra little bonus bits, and it's still a decent box size, etc, etc. God knows what they'll actually do, but it's definitely doable, and I think they are going to do it. I believe that. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, personally, I think we'll see. I think we'll see the rest of the Space Marine line come out before we see any specialists or Primarchs, for sure. Yeah, and then I could see Custodes being a release for certain. Again, I'm not gonna reveal too much about what we've already spoken about in the podcast, because I suppose we're spoiling the podcast. But yes, it's I'd be very interested to see how they handle Custodes. I love the rule set so far. I've already banged on about that several times in this video already before you turned up. But I'm not even a Custodes player, but I want them to get them right, and this feels like a scale where they could get it right. Which sounds weird, because you would think a large-scale game would be the complete opposite. But I think you could do the rules for Custodes better than you could at the 28mm scale. Because of the extra scale of the game, I think you can really show off how epic Custodes are supposed to be by just the sheer models that you use, the model counts on the bases, and giving them the suitably epic rules to make a three-man team of Custodes just feel like a god tier unit almost, without them being broken and overpowered. Because I'm pretty sure the only way you could realistically do that with 40k is to basically go, okay, let's just say that every Custodes model is just a character, and therefore you're only going to get a handful of models, which in theory is how it probably should be. But at least at Legion scale, you could actually have quite a few bases of models and still feel like you've got units to play with. But those models only have a couple of, or those bases only have a couple of models on the base, and they've got big rules, so they're almost like knights in terms of power, but obviously on a more infantry scale. I'm still not advocating that Custodes should be able to Custodian's infantry should be able to run up and shoot a knight out. That's just not going to happen. But potentially getting close enough and maybe pull it apart. Yeah, I could believe that. Yes. Yeah, I almost reckon custodians would need to be basically the opposite of knights, where the knights are predominantly big, scary gun platforms. The custodians should be small, scary melee platforms. And obviously there are exceptions to the rule. Some of the knights are very, very, very good in melee, but then there'll also be some custodians units that are very, very good in shooting, like certain vehicles, I would imagine. I'm guessing anyway. I don't really know custodians vehicles very much because I don't like the look of them. So don't know why. I just never like the custodians vehicles. Bikes look cool, but other than that, not interested. I will check that out in just a second. Just let me finish off this red. Almost done. There we go. Right, let's go have a look. Oh, I've got 3 to look at now. Here we go. What have you sent me? Right. Click on that one. What have we got? A custodian for the Alpha Legion. Yeah. Oh, cool. I like. Yep. I've got one for ours. It's got to be a wolf. Oh no, Night Lord. Oh, a Night Lord Custodes. Oh, that does look very cool. That does look very cool. Your one, go away, word bearer then. Oh no. Oh yes, yeah. I mean, I like the fact that the word bearer's one is just very basic. No colours, nothing on it. Almost the opposite of the word bearers, really, because they're very ostentatious in the rune carvings and stuff like that. Although I suppose Heresy era, they were grey armoured in Heresy. I think I'm sure they were grey armoured. I don't think they'd gone to red yet. Maybe they had. I can't remember. I need to double check word bearers. Or Great Crusade era, anyway. Great Crusade era, they were definitely grey. Custodes very much looks like the Custodes one for the wolves. There looks very much like the Varangian Guard, which is an old, very old military unit. Okay. Yeah, I know the Imperial Heralds were grey. I always had it in my head that they stayed grey for a while, but I don't know why. That always seems to be the way I think about it. Right. Got to go and do a little request now for Zeta. I'm going to go grab a Questoris Knight. really getting into the whole word bearers thing, aren't you? Because you almost sound like you're trying to spread the word yourself now. There we go. Little knight. So. The Chaos God's got some good points. Yeah, I suppose, kind of. Right, so there is a Questorus Knight. That is a 40mm square base, so it's obviously got a little bit of extra foot play than a round. You had, I know you were using a. There's a nice Knoll Oil shade bottle there, look. Right. He is pretty much, with the rocket pod, about as tall as a pot of Knoll Oil shade. Which is, I want to say that's like a 60mm pot, an 80mm pot. Because these are the standard pots. He's a little bit taller than one of those. But he's about the same size with the base as that. Like, that is from the... Obviously, I can see it from here. I'm trying to turn it that way. But he is basically the same height with the base. In fact, yeah, he's almost as wide as well. Is that the same size as a contrast pot? I think so. I think the technical pots, technical shades and contrast pots are all the same size, I think. They're all the same standard size. So that's a Tesseract Glow there, which is the same size. I don't actually have any contrast pots to hand because I've obviously decanted them all. But I'm 90% sure that is the same size as a contrast pot. Yeah, but is it the new shade or the old shade? Because this is obviously the new shade. Hang on, let me see if I've got a spare pot somewhere. I might still have one of the pots lying around. Right, you're getting the behind the scenes here of all of the paints that I have bought ready to refill pots. There you go. There's a contrast Basilicanum Grey, exact same size as the shade pot. So I don't know what shade pots you've got, but that shade is the same size as that one, as that contrast pot. This is one of the old shades, which is taller. So the old shades. So there you go. So yeah, behind the scenes, that I buy extra pots because I know I'm going to run out. The only thing I don't have extra of, which I've just discovered I desperately need more of, is Reikland Flesh Shade, because I've used a ton of Reikland Flesh Shade. I hardly ever use it. But for a terrain project, it was the only shade paint I could use for the project. I did make up a big batch of homemade wash, but I needed a ready wash and I didn't have any red inks or anything, so I just went sod it, I'm going to use me Reikland Flesh Shade on it, and I burned through almost my entire tube of Reikland Flesh Shade. And I still have more to do, so I need a couple more pots. Right, that one goes up there, because that's... Yeah, that tray is one tray. I've got stack up there as well. I've got way more paints than I probably need. I take it you're talking about your older paint pot there. Right, there you go. So yeah, that should give you a rough idea. If he's roughly the same size as that pot of paint, he's probably the right size. Can't answer that without actually seeing how the files go together. Obviously, when I do those things, I normally put magnet holes in them in the files, so that I don't have to do that post-process. Which I could potentially look at doing for you, but yeah, pop files on Teams. I'll have a look. I'll have a look at some point today if I get a chance. Missing Thunderstrike gauntlets. It's only one of the variants? Nope. Every single knight can take a Thunderstrike gauntlet. Every knight can be upgraded with a Thunderstrike gauntlet for 2 points. Hence why I've got 6. Also, the Thunderstrike gauntlets are very good. Sorry to say it. Well, sorry for you. I'm not sorry. I love it because I've already got them. Yeah, there's yeah, the Reaper. Yeah, you did. The Reaper Chainglaive that you get. I think it's Reaper Chainglaive or Reaper Chainsword, whichever. Yeah, you can get the missile pods for 5 points. Yeah, the Reaper Chainsword, that is really good. It's a really good weapon. But for the extra 2 points, it's the same as the Reaper, but Thunderstrike Gauntlet gives you Wrecker, which means you can punch buildings down. And trust me, as someone who's looking at running entire knight armies as well, there aren't many ways to knock buildings out. So yeah, you want Questoris Knights with Thunderstrike Gauntlets because they will just be able to knock buildings over. Which is very handy if you've got to try and dig some infantry out of a building because their guns aren't very good at shooting them out of buildings. They can, but they're not very efficient at it. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the infantry and buildings are great for the player who's got infantry in the building. They're not great for the player trying to get rid of them. Because you get a -1 to hit them. Then they also get a cover save. And cover saves pretty damn good, because unless you have Ignore's cover, they just get the save. And most buildings give you 4-up saves, which in Legions is very good, especially for infantry. Even Terminators in Legions only get a 4-up save. But that's obviously an armor save, which is modifiable, whereas a 4-up cover save is not modifiable. I was doing my my bearing of the word about Black Legion earlier, saying it was the best black paint you can use. Don't bother with Abaddon Black or Black Templar. Just go straight for the Abaddon. Just go straight for the Black Templar. Despite being a contrast paint, just covers better than a base paint. Counterintuitive though that may be. I'm sure Black Templar does have its purpose. In fact, I did sort of mention that earlier, that it will have its benefits. I mean, for a start, the fact that it doesn't cover quite so well does mean that you'll get a little bit more of the paint coming, the undercoats coming through. I would imagine with a little bit of contrast medium, you could probably turn Black Templar into quite a dark shade paint. Yeah, I'd imagine that works quite well, because you'll still get some of that colour coming through, which in that instance would be very good. But when you want a nice solid black like I want here, Black Templar is the way to go. Just like this little lad here, which I also just realised I haven't put the shade on yet, so I need to do that. I got too excited putting the reds on that one. So let's do that. Let's grab me shade. Still got a little bit of Nuln Oil left in this pot, I think, if I find it. There it is. Not much Nuln Oil left in there, but thankfully found a pot of Nuln Oil when me and the team went out for a weekend, for a trip out on a weekend a couple. Was it last weekend? Weekend before last? And went to our local stores. And we went out for the day to post doing just before we decided to sit down and do some recording. And went to all the local stores. And met some great guys at the Games Workshop store. Met some. Went to the local independent gaming store as well, and wasn't until towards the end I suddenly realised, oh, I needed to pick up some more black Nuln Oil because I'm now going to run out, because every single army I paint in Legions pretty much is coated in the stuff now to one degree or another, so I run out of it pretty quick, and I just used it on another big project as well. And apparently during Christmas, as I've just discovered, Nuln Oil runs out really fast in all the shops. Because the local gaming store didn't have any left, citing delivery delays. And we went back to our local Games Workshop store, and they only had one pot left on the shelf. So I obviously very quickly snapped that up and paid for it immediately. And yeah, same thing. They just haven't had their post-Christmas delivery yet. So, or at the time, this was obviously a week or two ago now. So hopefully there'll be a plentiful supply of shades now. But yeah, turns out, apparently, despite what everyone says about the new Nuln Oil not being very good, apparently everyone's still using it. So, because it just flies off the shelf at Christmas. So I no longer believe the propaganda that people don't like Nuln Oil. I refuse to believe that now. I mean, I like it, as you can see, but there's been a lot of anti-Nuln Oil talk since they changed the formula. Okay, So, what Titan Legions work with word bearers then? Apparently, I'm gonna laugh about this. So, make me laugh. All of, really, flame decals. Yeah, you're gonna be getting yourself some flame decals, or you're gonna start learning to paint flames. You got ahead of me there. You knew it was coming. But why wouldn't you want to paint flames? Flames are fun to paint, aren't they? No, I wouldn't be doing that. So all the others are basically mirrors of the Legion's colour scheme in some way, shape or form. And horribly close to my knight household. So, yeah. So, does that mean then that you're gonna follow me into the realms of making your own Titan Legion? It's much more fun. You can do your own thing. I'm biased. I like making custom stuff, as you know. Speaking of making custom stuff, actually, one thing obviously I want to do for our channel and for our videos is obviously I want some 28mm scale models to do close-ups, close-up shots and stuff for. So particularly like so to start with, I'm thinking just like commanders and stuff. So maybe, for my House Dracaran, I might want to have a knight scion or two. A Titan Princept for the Legio, and obviously the Astartes. We got commanders and Primarchs. So obviously, I can just do commanders and stuff. Word bearers, obviously, you can just do a word bearer's commander or a demon prince or something like that. Obviously, night houses, you can have your own things. But for the stuff like the Sword Auxilia, the Dark Mechanicum, even, you can kind of get away with quite easily because there's models there. The Astartes are easy. But I was thinking about knights. How would you do a knight scion? A knight pilot? And I think I've found the perfect kit. So I'm thinking maybe, especially as certainly me, you and Els are all going to have knights, and they'll be a big part of our armies. So we'll probably have knights commanding some of our armies at some point. Thematically, there is a warlord mechanic in my new rules, by the way, or at least started to make one. I found a kit that I think would work as a knight scion based on the artwork as well, and that is it's the Kill Team now Imperial Agents kit. The Subductors, I think they're called, the sort of Arbites units. Wouldn't require too much modification to make into scions and look like they're depicted in a lot of the artwork I've seen, because they've almost got their armour looks more like knight armour. So with a little bit of a head swap here and there, and a little bit of maybe a little bit of carving, maybe or a little bit of extra detail work, the base armour looks like plated armour, so like knightly armour, which is what scions supposedly wear when they're not in their big knight suits. So I was thinking maybe at some point me, you and Els maybe go get a box between us and just split the models out of it, so we each can make three character models from a box or something, which would obviously make it nice and cheap for all of us then. So that'd be a nice easy way of doing that one. Knight Princeps, not sure about. That would require a little bit more thunking, I think. Possibly Navy Breaches, maybe, but I don't really think that they look ostentatious enough for a Princeps. But then again, I'm not really sure what Princeps really look like. But Scions, I think I figured out. And I think we could split a box between the three of us, and that would work quite well. Oh. Yeah, I'm talking about something that I can convert rather than spending like 20-30 quid on a single model. But yes, that would look cool. But yeah, I'm just thinking about a box where we can just convert characters out of, which would be a bit more efficient, money-wise anyway. Do I even want to know what box that is part of? Is it going to be part of some big starter box or some ridiculously expensive box? Because I feel like that's where it's leading. Oh! Oh no, I'm not... no! Like... It's not a bad box for what it's intended for, but not for what I'm talking about. I mean, you want to pay for that just to get that one model out for a close-up model, a close-up camera work model that may or may not even end up on the table very often. That's up to you, but I'm not in for that. Yeah, you could do some cool things with that, I would imagine. Yeah, you could definitely do something with that, I'm sure. I mean, most kits have potential conversion for something. I keep looking at the Inquisitorial Agents box as just an amazing little box just to buy, just to have all the bits from it. But yeah, what would we be better off getting? And I don't really know what that's in reference to either. The Imperial Agents Combat Patrol. What's in the Combat Patrol? I don't actually know. I feel like that's going to be the that's going to be the ultimate conversion box. Ooh. Yeah, so it's got the Inquisitional Agents. It's got the knight armor suits that I was talking about. That's what I call them. Yeah, random assassin. I mean, yes, it would be a great pickup. I mean, I suppose from a discount retailer, that probably goes down a little bit. I'd only pick that up though if there was at least 2 or 3 of us buying it, because I would not have use for more than half the stuff in that kit. As much as I'd love to have all the bits in it, I'd literally only be using it to make some funky characters out of. feel like that might be a joint stream we should do at some point. It's just we should just sit there and convert a couple of knight characters out of a of a box of inquisitional bits. I think that could be quite fun. Yeah, it's not too bad. Maybe that's something they yeah. You probably you're not wrong. It's probably a better option with that in mind. Maybe we'll think about picking one of those up at some point between us then. Make some characters out of. Sure we can get a few knight commanders out of that, and possibly even come up with some way of making some kind of knight titan princeps maybe. I know at some point I'm going to have to buy the Solar Auxilia Command Squad at some point, just so I can make a character out of that. Won't need to do it for my Alpha Legion, already got that. Yeah, it's quite expensive. Word Barrett character done. Okay. I mean, technically you could just buy any kit and technically just call it done, I suppose. Yes, you could just do a master possession. I still call that cheating though. You know, you got to do a conversion. It's got to look like a unique character. Can't just grab a kit and paint it. That doesn't count. That's not a character. Not for what we're doing. We want something with personality. Even if that personality is a vegetable, because it's a word pair. No, you can't have it at the small scale as well. No, that would not work. It would look weird. please tell me you've got that kit. As in, please tell me you're printing that. If you're not printing that, you don't deserve to be playing Word Bearers, I'm just saying. Cool. Yep, that's cool. Yeah, so that is very cool. However, I stand by, you can't just buy the basic kit and paint it up. You'd still have to make it unique. You gotta imagine these are gonna be the equivalent of our named characters. So they've got to be suitably cool. Feel free to just use that kit and modify it, sure, but you can't just paint that kit up. No, I've got to convert up an 8mm scale Artharis at some point. I've got the models for it. I need to get you and Joe down here at some point to have a play with the new rule system at some point, so we can expand our playtest pool, because me and Els will be playtesting them as often as we can, but it would be good to get some other insight and opinion and feedback. So it'd be a good excuse to get you two down here to have a go and see what you think. Let's see if you can provide any insight. Once we've play tested everything to a reasonable degree, I then want to release it so that anyone can have a go, and try and set up a system for people to provide feedback as well, because there's only so much playtesting we can do with it. But if we release it out to the community to try out, then hopefully we can get some feedback on it and keep building it up. Yeah, I'd like to try out some psychic rules actually. I don't know how I'd do it, to be honest, because I don't really have any psychers, which is very unusual for me. I mean, I do have a psychic titan, but that's not really the same, and I'm not sure that those rules really account for that. But I need to see if I can fit a psychic unit into my auxiliaries somehow. Although I still really want a psychic knight. I'm just saying the chaos knights in 40k have a psychic knight. I don't see why I can't have one. You just want chaos knights, full stop. 'Cause, 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 the Abominant is very cool. I mean, I like it because it's a Psychic Knight, so obviously I like it. But I want a Psychic Knight that I can run in my Legions games. I want a Psychic Knight. Maybe we'll just make some rules for Psychic Knights. Yeah, it'll be fine. They must exist in lore, surely. Can have Psyches in every other army, including Titans. There must be Psychic Knights. One thing they are missing, though, which is starting to bug me now, no Dominus class Knights. I feel like my Knight collection is missing the Dominus. It's just not there. It's a full plastic kit. We know it's a Heresy era chassis. So why do I not have my Dominus Knights? Well, I'm very much hoping that that might be on the list of things that will get released at some point for plastic kits for Legions, is the Dominus Knight. I suppose no one's made a conversion kit actually for Knights so that you can convert them into Chaos Knights. Like a 3D printed one. Unless someone has and I've just not seen it. Wait, you can't take it? Why not? Can you not? Why can't you take it in Horus Heresy? I don't understand. As far as I know, the Dominus Knights have been around since the Heresy, because they're, as far as I'm aware, they're the same as the Questoris pattern Knights. They were actually agriculture rigs or mining rigs that were converted for war, rather than the other Heresy Knight kits, which were actually designed by the Imperium for war. Huh. I mean, as far as I know, that doesn't make sense in lore, because as far as I know, the Imperium have had access to Questoris and Dominus chassis since day one. Or the Knight Houses have. Because as I say, they're converted agricultural rigs, essentially. So that doesn't make any sense. But that does then make me wonder if they will ever come to tiny scale. Go on then. You've obviously found something. They were in version 1.0, okay. Right, okay. That's interesting. Do you know, I feel like I'm sensing that I might need to either find a nice 3D printed version or some kind of conversion kit for a plastic kit and make my own Dominus rules for this then, because there is a risk that they have no intention of adding that to the 8mm range at any point, and certainly not any point soon if they've dropped it out of the new rules. So, Now you've got a conversion kit thingy, have you? Is it any good? Because I don't mind converting. I don't mind the idea of converting a plastic kit. Done it before. I'll have to have a look, because if it is any good, then I definitely will take the initiative on that then, and make my own Dominus kits, I think, because again, we're not actually setting our game in the Horus Heresy anyway. But if there's a chance that they might not even make the kit themselves at any point soon, then yeah, I'm definitely going to make my own. Oh, it's a conversion for a print. That's all the bronze detailing on that guy done, so that's ready for washing. God, I just realised it's 5:15 already. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, that does not suit the style of the knights I got at all. Looks alright for what it is, but it won't fit the style that I've got going here, so I won't be using that one, I don't think. But I will. I'll have to have a look around at some point and see if I can find either a Dominus kit for 8mm, or see if someone's got a conversion kit for a Questoris maybe. Might be a bit of a tall order, but we'll see. Something to have a look for. It depends what kind of depends if they can kind of match the style, really, because obviously the reason I picked these kits up is because they match the style for the Games Workshop kits, which, because I want them to fit in with the rest of the army. And I know there's a bit of a taboo about not just using one-to-one prints for GW kits, which I get the argument for, fair enough. And the only reason why I use these is because I'm not paying for Forge World resin prices for a tiny model. Not a chance. I will be printing that. If they release a plastic version of this kit, I'll buy the plastic version of the kit. No problem. But I'm not paying for their rubbish resin when I've got a resin printer. And the reason why I'll justify a Dominus print is because if they ain't gonna make one, I still want one. And they can't complain if they ain't making it. I mean that, yeah, that one's not really the. It doesn't really match the style close enough for my liking. Not from what I saw in that picture anyway. I mean, it might be a little bit, might have been the lighting maybe, I suppose, but it didn't quite sit right with me. I couldn't see that being sat next to my plastic Questoris Knights and looking right. Yeah, it wasn't really the head that got me, it was the proportions. And then I'd have to see it up against my the Questoris I've got here, I think. Might have to do a comparison at some point, see how they look. Right, well, it is 20 past 5, which I've only just noticed, really. So, probably gonna leave it there now, guys. We did start a little bit later, but I think we've just about managed to sort of marry up the time a little bit, so we should be more or less about right for our usual 3 hours, give or take. So I've only got that one little night to finish off. Trying to decide whether I'm going to finish that tonight now or not, because my original intention was to take the afternoon off, give myself a little break. But I don't know. I might carry on with it and get it finished. I do really feel like I need to finish these 9 now. They've been sat on this desk for about 3 weeks, not being finished. And I got some editing to do tomorrow, so they're not likely to get finished tomorrow. We'll see. I'm not sure. I might carry on with them, or I might finish them on Tuesday maybe. Yeah, well, I'll come to that decision later. That's not something I need to decide now, and it's not really going to be relevant for you guys. But either way, I think I will get them finished before the episode or the next hobby haul next weekend. So you'll probably see a finished version of them with base and everything on the thumbnail. And hopefully the latest episode of Hobby Haul, or should I say the previous week's episode, but the latest for YouTube, will have gone live. Will have gone live at 5 o'clock on YouTube. And we also have a slightly new updated thumbnail style. We've now got obviously our new branded t-shirts. So we've taken some new. We've done a bit of photography, got pictures of the team, so we've got some nice new thumbnails with us in it, with our new outfits on, which all look very cool. And I've got an absolute ton of film pictures now. So we got some variety to make the thumbnails stand out a little bit more, and whatever funky things I want to do with them. So over the next week or so, there will be some updates and changes to some of our graphics. Some thumbnails might get updated, and any new ones going forward will be slightly different. But overall, it's that's going to be it for this stream. Like I said, if you want to see any more, there will be a previous stream live on YouTube now. There'll be another stream next weekend at the usual time. In addition to that, on Tuesday, about 4 o'clock, I would have thought, a new podcast will be going live, and it will be a deep dive into the representation of the Xenos in Warhammer. So that is a episode that we recorded just before Christmas, and just haven't got around to releasing it yet. So that will be released this week, and then we've got another couple already recorded, ready to be edited, which will come out in the next 2 to 4 weeks from Tuesday, depending on which one you're looking for. Alright, so with all that being said, I think that is it for today. Please do go and check out YouTube, check out our social medias. You can find links to them usually in the descriptions of our Twitches or YouTube, and everything should be interconnected somewhere. Okay, so you should be able to find everything nice and easy. But normally if you can just type in Mead Wargaming into your search bar, you'll probably find us. And we have made a concerted effort to be more active on our socials, so you should find a lot more content appearing on Instagrams and TikTok now as well. So, that's enough of me rambling. I've gone on enough, so thank you very much for watching. Goodbye, and I'll see you next time in the Mead Hall.